Welcome to Conviction and Controversy, a space for reason, conscience, and honest reflection. The quiet fight, what Stoicism gets wrong about strength, and what it gets right. Strength is one of those words we think we understand until life demands we actually live it. Everyone grows up with their own definition. For some people, strength is never crying. For others, it's surviving. For others still, it's pretending. And for a long time, I lived with a definition that was carved into me more by culture, hardship, and expectation than by anything grounded in truth. The world teaches you strength by accident. It teaches you through what it praises, what it punishes, what it notices, and what it ignores. And if you're not paying attention, you absorb a version of strength that isn't actually yours. It took me years, hard years, to figure out that I wasn't even holding my definition of strength. I was holding someone else's idea of what a man is supposed to be. And then I discovered Stoicism, not as a book I stumbled on in a library, not as a philosophy I went looking for, but as something given to me in a moment when I didn't even know I needed it. And oddly enough, Stoicism both sharpened my understanding of strength and confused it. It gave me clarity on things I'd been wrestling with for years, and it also magnified the parts of me I already knew were broken. Stoicism gets a lot right about strength. It also gets a lot wrong, or maybe more accurately, it gets misinterpreted. And if you're not careful, you take the wrong lessons as gospel. I want to talk about that quiet fight, the one you never admit to anyone else. The fight between the version of strength you inherited and the version you're trying to grow into. The fight between silence and honesty. The fight between the armor you built to survive and the character you're trying to build so you can live. Strength isn't something you're born with, and it's not something you fake. It's something you learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's a cycle of breaking down and rebuilding. A quiet, relentless recalibration of who you are when no one is around to clap for you. That's what this piece is about. The truth behind strength, the parts Stoicism helps illuminate, and the parts where you have to step beyond the philosophy and figure out your own path. I grew up believing strength was about not showing weakness. That's how the world frames it. Teachers praised toughness. Parents praised stoicism, little s, not capital S. Society doesn't teach you to feel your emotions. It teaches you to hide them. And honestly, for a while, that works. It works in adolescence. It works in your early 20s. It works until life actually collapses on you. Until grief, trauma, failure, or responsibility hits with real weight. And then that old definition of strength falls apart, because you realize it was never meant to hold up anything heavier than image. For me, that lesson came slowly. I didn't break all at once. It was more like erosion, a slow wearing down of the persona I thought I had to maintain. Service changed me. Loss changed me. Marriage changed me. Becoming a father changed me. Trauma changed me. And you don't always realize the change is happening in the moment. Sometimes you wake up one day and realize you don't fit inside the version of strength you built for yourself. It's too tight, too rigid, too hollow. When I first opened my copy of The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman, it wasn't because I was on some noble quest for wisdom. It was because my therapist handed it to me and said, "Try this." I didn't even know what Stoicism really was. I had heard the word. I had a vague idea it meant being calm or emotionless, which, funny enough, is exactly what modern culture thinks Stoicism is. But as I started reading, I realized something. Stoicism isn't emotionlessness. It's discipline. It's order. It's self-governance. It's the ability to align your inner world so cleanly that chaos on the outside doesn't take you with it. And the more I read, the more I saw where I had misunderstood strength my whole life. Stoicism wasn't telling me to be stone. It was telling me to be steady. It wasn't telling me to be cold. It was telling me to be clear. And it wasn't telling me to avoid pain. It was telling me to face it head-on without letting it dictate my character. But here's the tension. Stoicism can also reinforce the wrong kind of strength if you're not careful. Because if you already lean towards self-silencing or self-isolation or carrying everything alone, you can take Stoic teachings and twist them into justification. You can trick yourself into thinking you're being stoic when really you're just avoiding vulnerability. You can convince yourself you're being disciplined when really you're just shutting down. I've lived that contradiction. I've lived the tension between emotional honesty and emotional suppression. I've been the guy who thought he was being strong by keeping everything inside, only to watch that pressure turn into resentment, anger, distance, and exhaustion. Stoicism says you should master your mind, not ignore it. It says you should control your reactions, not erase your emotions. But if you come to Stoicism already carrying wounds you haven't dealt with, those teachings can accidentally feed the parts of you that want to disappear behind discipline. Stoicism can become a wall instead of a foundation. And that's not Stoicism's fault. It's ours. Any philosophy can be misunderstood if you're using it to avoid the things you're terrified to confront. Strength, the way Stoicism defines it, is internal first. It's self-discipline, consistency, clarity. It's showing up every day for the things that matter. Marcus Aurelius wasn't telling himself to be superhuman. He was reminding himself he was flawed, emotional, reactive, tempted by comfort, tempted by ego. And he wrote those reflections in private, not as some moral performance. Epictetus wasn't lecturing the world about being unbreakable. He was talking to people who were already carrying weight that would crush most of us. And Seneca's letters weren't the writings of a man immune to suffering. They were the letters of a man trying to make sense of it. The older I get, the more I realize strength is mostly about truth. It's about telling the truth about who you are, what you fear, what you want, what you're running from. And that's where Stoicism gets it right, because it forces you to confront reality without flinching. It doesn't let you hide behind narrative or excuses. It doesn't let you blame the world for your internal state. It doesn't let you outsource responsibility for your character. But where Stoicism gets misunderstood is in the idea that being unshakable means being unreadable, or that being calm means being disconnected, or that being disciplined means being numb. True strength isn't numb. Numbness is a trauma response, not a virtue. I've spent a lot of nights awake wrestling with this. Nights where the house is quiet and everyone is asleep, and the only thing left in the room is my own mind. Those moments are where strength becomes real. Not in the big public decisions, not in the dramatic declarations. Strength is built in the quiet. In the conversations you have with yourself before the world wakes up. In the honesty you're willing to face when there's no distraction left to lean on. Stoicism taught me to stop running from myself. But I had to unlearn the lie that facing yourself means doing it alone. There's a version of masculinity, especially in modern culture, that glorifies the lone wolf. The man who needs nothing, shares nothing, leans on no one. And if you combine that with a surface-level reading of Stoicism, you get a really dangerous formula. You get a man who thinks suffering in silence is noble. You get a man who thinks opening up is weakness. You get a man who thinks discipline means never bending. But silence isn't strength. Isolation isn't strength. Rigidity isn't strength. A tree that never bends eventually snaps. The Stoics were not lone wolves. They wrote letters. They had mentors. They had friends. They had philosophical communities. They shared their burdens. They debated. They failed. They leaned on each other. Marcus Aurelius wrote about gratitude for the people who shaped him. Seneca wrote entire collections of letters to a friend. Epictetus taught in a school filled with students. Yet modern Stoic culture turns them into these emotionless statues of solitary endurance. That's fiction. Strength is knowing how to carry weight without letting it crush you. But it's also knowing when to set the weight down long enough to breathe. It's knowing when to take responsibility and when to ask for help. It's knowing when to push yourself harder and when to admit you're overwhelmed. Stoicism offers clarity, but it does not demand silence. It offers discipline, but it does not demand self-erasure. It offers resilience, but it does not demand emotional isolation. There's a quiet danger in misreading Stoicism. You can become so focused on maintaining your composure that you mistake suppression for mastery. A lot of men, especially those of us who've been through heavy shit, fall into that trap. When you've survived enough chaos, detachment feels safe. Control feels safe. Predictability feels safe. And Stoicism can reinforce those patterns in a way that looks virtuous on the surface. But underneath, it's still fear. Fear of unraveling. Fear of being seen. Fear of not being enough. True strength requires facing the fear itself, not hiding behind discipline as a shield. One of the biggest things Stoicism gets right is the idea that perception shapes our experience. The world is neutral. It's our interpretation that gives events their emotional weight. But here's where you have to tread carefully. That doesn't mean emotion is meaningless. It means emotion is information. If something hurts, you're not supposed to pretend it doesn't. You're supposed to understand why. If something scares you, you're not supposed to deny the fear. You're supposed to analyze it, learn from it, grow through it. Emotional awareness is not emotional weakness. Emotional discipline is not emotional denial. Strength means being able to hold emotion without drowning in it. It means being able to navigate your internal storms without capsizing. But you can't do that if you refuse to acknowledge the storm is happening. You can't steer a ship by pretending the waves don't exist. Stoicism is about steering, about maintaining direction, not about denying the sea. When I began taking Stoicism seriously, one of the biggest shifts in my life was realizing how much of my emotional life I had been outsourcing to circumstance. How often I let external events dictate my inner state. How often I blamed life for my reactions instead of evaluating my reactions themselves. Stoicism forced me to stop using the world as an excuse. It forced me to look at the gap between who I was and who I wanted to be. And that gap is uncomfortable to look at. It shows you every inconsistency, every cowardice, every avoidance, every habit of self-betrayal. But that discomfort is where strength grows. This is where Stoicism shines. It gives you a framework to restructure your inner world. It helps you step back from the noise and ask better questions. It helps you create distance between stimulus and response. It helps you see how often your suffering is self-created, and it helps you break the cycle. But Stoicism alone is not enough. You have to apply it with honesty, not with performance. You have to apply it with humility, not with pride. And you have to apply it with the understanding that you are a human being, not a statue carved out of marble. I'll be real with you. The hardest part about strength isn't enduring pain. It's living truthfully when you don't feel strong. It's waking up in the morning and choosing honesty over image. It's looking at your life and asking yourself what you're avoiding. It's admitting the ways you sabotage yourself. It's confronting the habits you've built as armor. Those moments are terrifying, but that's the quiet fight every man faces at some point. The fight between who you've been and who you're trying to become. Stoicism gives you tools, but you still have to pick them up. It gives you a path, but you still have to walk it. And walking that path is harder than people admit. It's unglamorous, it's repetitive, it's humbling. It feels like failure half the time. But slowly, almost invisibly at first, strength forms. Not the showy kind, not the Instagram kind, not the motivational poster kind. The real kind, the quiet, honest, inner kind. Strength begins when you stop lying to yourself. Stoicism helps you do that. But it doesn't replace the work. It doesn't eliminate the emotional labor. It doesn't solve the problem of being a human being trying to live a decent life in a world that constantly pulls you toward distraction, ego, insecurity, and comfort. Stoicism gives you a lens. You still have to use it. You still have to learn how to see clearly. A turning point in my own life was realizing how much of my tension came from trying to be unbreakable, from trying to hold everything together alone, from trying to be the person everyone leaned on without ever leaning back. And Stoicism, when misused, can strengthen that tendency. But when understood correctly, it helps dismantle it. It shows you that strength is not self-sufficiency, it's self-possession. It's knowing who you are well enough that you don't collapse when life pushes back. Here's the part people don't talk about enough. The Stoics were not perfect examples of their own teachings. Marcus Aurelius lost his temper. Seneca contradicted himself. Epictetus admitted to struggling. And that's empowering, because it shows us Stoicism is not a blueprint for perfection. It's a practice for progress. Strength comes from progress, not from flawlessness. Stoicism tells you to control what you can and release what you can't. But strength is knowing the difference. The old version of me tried to control everything. My emotions, my circumstances, other people's reactions, the whole world. That's not strength. That's fear disguised as discipline. Real strength is letting go of the illusion of control and accepting responsibility only for what's actually yours. Your thoughts, your actions, your character. And character is where Stoicism and true strength meet perfectly. Because character isn't built in moments of glory. It's built in private decisions, in how you behave when nobody is watching, in the standards you hold yourself to when there's no reward. Stoicism teaches that. It teaches that your life is shaped by your choices, not your conditions. It teaches that integrity is internal, that virtue is rooted in behavior, not in optics. But Stoicism also warns against pride, against thinking you've mastered yourself just because you can stay calm on the outside. Pride is the enemy of strength. It keeps you rigid. It keeps you from learning. It keeps you defensive. And when pride mixes with misread Stoicism, you get someone who mistakes emotional shutdown for emotional strength. You get someone who thinks they're above vulnerability. You get someone who refuses to admit they need growth. The quiet fight inside every man is the fight between pride and honesty, between who we pretend to be and who we actually are. Strength is choosing honesty, every time, even when it costs you something, especially when it costs you something. Stoicism gets one more big thing right. Suffering is inevitable, but misery is not. Pain happens. Being ruled by pain is optional. Strength doesn't come from avoiding suffering. It comes from learning how to suffer well, how to face hardship without losing your humanity. But suffering well doesn't mean suffering in silence. It means suffering with awareness, dignity, clarity, and purpose. It means finding meaning in difficulty. It means refusing to let adversity dictate your values. There's a quote from Marcus Aurelius: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the core of strength. Every obstacle is an invitation to grow. But here's the nuance. Growth is not automatic. You don't become stronger just because something hurt you. Trauma doesn't automatically shape you into a better person. Hardship doesn't automatically produce character. It only does those things if you engage with it consciously. Stoicism helps you engage. It helps you reflect instead of react. It helps you choose responses that align with who you're trying to be, instead of who you were taught to be. But Stoicism doesn't define strength for you. You have to define it yourself. You have to build a version of strength that's rooted in truth, not performance. A version that honors your humanity, not just your endurance. A version that leaves room for love, connection, and vulnerability, not just grit. A version that allows you to change, not just resist. Strength is fluid. It evolves as you evolve. And if your definition of strength hasn't changed in 10 years, you're not growing, you're clinging. So here's what I've learned. Strength is a balance. It's a balance between discipline and compassion, between resilience and honesty, between endurance and rest, between carrying burdens and letting them go, between pushing forward and standing still long enough to understand why you're pushing in the first place. Stoicism gives you one half of that balance, the discipline, the clarity, the structure. Life gives you the other half, the vulnerability, the emotion, the connection, the humanity. The quiet fight isn't about choosing one or the other. It's about learning to hold both. It's about learning to be a steady man in a chaotic world without losing the parts of you that make you human. It's about learning to speak truth without needing to shout. It's about learning to feel without being ruled by feeling. It's about learning to carry weight without pretending it doesn't hurt. Strength is not the absence of weakness. It's the courage to confront your weakness honestly. Stoicism helps with that. But you still have to show up. You still have to do the work. You still have to choose the harder path every day. Not because it makes you look strong, but because it makes you become strong. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this. Strength begins in the dark. In the moments you think no one will ever understand. In the moments you question who you're becoming. In the moments where the noise fades and you're left alone with your reflection. Those moments shape you. They test you. And if you face them with honesty, if you let yourself be real, imperfect, vulnerable, and committed, you will grow stronger than you ever imagined. Stoicism gets something deeply right. You can't control the world, but you can control who you choose to be within it. And that choice, made over and over, quietly, privately, consistently, is where real strength is forged. But Stoicism also warns you not to mistake silence for strength, or detachment for clarity, or emotionlessness for discipline. You're not meant to be stone. You're meant to be steady. You're not meant to be cold. You're meant to be clear. You're not meant to be untouched by life. You're meant to be unbroken by it. The quiet fight is the lifelong struggle to live that truth, to outgrow the childhood version of strength you inherited. To build a manhood rooted in integrity, not performance. To endure hardship without closing off your heart. To be disciplined without becoming hardened. To be responsible without becoming rigid. To be courageous without becoming reckless. To be grounded without becoming numb. Strength is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not something you can show off. It's a quiet, daily, deliberate commitment to becoming someone you respect. Someone your family can rely on. Someone your younger self would be proud of. Someone your older self will be grateful for. Stoicism helps you become that person, but only if you let it be a guide, not a mask. In the end, strength is not about winning battles. It's about facing yourself. It's about refusing to run from the truth. It's about choosing virtue over ego. It's about choosing growth over comfort. And it's about choosing courage over avoidance, every single time. Stoicism gets that right. And if you're willing to live that truth, not just quote it, you'll discover a kind of strength that no one can take from you. Conviction and controversy, a voice for honest reflection. Thanks for spending a few minutes thinking this through with me. If you value honest reflection, subscribe and start here next. Conviction and controversy, a voice for honest reflection.